Sir, shall we start?
Yeah, up to you people. I am ready. So if
Yes,
you
sir.
think majority have joined, then
Yes, sir. We will officially introduce you, sir, to the participants. Then we will be starting.
so cycle ಆಡ್ಬರ್ಕ್ ನೋಡೋಣ ಇಬ್ರು.
Good morning to one and all. Welcome to today's session of FDP, sponsored by AICTE, organized by the Department of Biotechnology, the Oxford College of Engineering. Today we have our guest speaker, Dr. Basav L. Patil. He is a principal scientist, Agricultural Biotechnology Division, ICAR, Indian Institute of Horticulture Research, Bangalore. Dr. B.L. Patil did his BSc and MSc in Agriculture from University of Agricultural Sciences, Dharwad, and a PhD from Department of Plant Molecular Biology, University of Delhi, during the period of 2001 and 2005. During his PhD, he worked in an European Union funded program on Gemini viruses in collaboration with John Innes Centre, Norwich, UK. Part of his PhD research work was carried out in the University of Stuttgart, Germany, for which he received prestigious DAAD scholarship. He did his postdoctoral research in Donald Danforth Plant Science Center, St. Louis, USA, and contributed for the characterization of cassava virus from Africa and development of virus-resistant transgenic cassava, which has successful field trials in East Africa. Briefly, he returned to India to join as Scientist D in the DBT Institute, National Agri-Food Biotechnology Institute, located in Mohali. However, to continue his research career in plant virology, he moved to University of Basel, Switzerland, to work on characterization of cassava virus from India in an Indo-Swiss program. In the year 2012, he joined ICAR, National Research Center on Plant Biotechnology, New Delhi, India, as a senior scientist. He was the first molecular virologist to join NRCPB, and he initiated research on pigeon pea sterility mosaic Imara virus and emerging Imara virus. He also received funding from ICAR, NPTC, and DBT BIRAC for transgenic control of papaya and cotton viruses. He has published extensively in reputed international journals and has several book chapters to his credit, and also edited few books. He is a recognized editor and reviewer for several international journals and a reviewer for grant application for international and national funding agencies in his area of expertise. He has trained several research scholars from Africa, Americans, and India in the area of molecular plant virology and RNA interference technology. He has received several fellowships and grants during his research career and was honored with the IVS Fellow Award by the Indian Virology Society in 2014 in recognition for his contribution in the area of plant virology. During the period 2016 and 17, he received scholarship from the European Union funded Erasmus Mundus program to carry out short-term research in a European university under the BRAVE project. He has been nominated by CSIR as an external expert to assess the CSIR scientist. In the year July 2018, he relocated to Indian Institute of Horticulture Research, another ICAR institute in Bangalore, and he continues to work as a principal scientist on molecular plant pathology with multiple projects which are funded by DBT, BCIL, ICAR, EMAS. His major emphasis is on the management of plant pests and pathogens using genome editing and RNA-based technologies. Sir, on behalf of the management, the staff, the students of the Oxford College of Engineering, I, Salma, Assistant Professor at the department, take this a privilege to welcome you.
Yeah, thank you, Salma, for this elaborate introduction. And thanks to Dr. Manjunath for this opportunity. Probably this is my first opportunity to speak in an engineering college. Otherwise, we are mostly affiliated to universities or institutes which are mostly involved in biological research. Can everybody hear me? Can
Yes,
everybody?
sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So can I continue? The slides are visible. Is audio, visual, everything fine?
Yes, sir. Fine, sir. Everything is fine, sir.
Okay, great. Yeah, good morning, everybody. Well, it's nice to know that you have organized a 2 weeks faculty development program on bioinnovation, patenting, and entrepreneurship opportunities in biotechnology for sustainable environment. I hope my talk has relevance to the theme of your training program. I'm sure it may not be that easy to employ, especially genetic engineering. For it needs a lot of investment and resources to come up with this. Only multinational companies or companies with huge entrepreneurial facilities are able to do that. But I'm sure this will add to your knowledge and information, and some of you are, can venture into can make you help of this. I'm sure it will help you to start some new entrepreneurship. Well, my topic is, basically plant viral diseases and how to manage them through biotechnological interventions. I'm sure you are all now hearing the word virus at least a couple of times in a day due to this coronavirus pandemic, and you should be aware that there are much more larger number of viruses infecting plant species, causing even more damage than what they cause in human beings or animals. But uh, the plant life probably is not visible to us, and we don't appreciate much. But viral diseases are really damaging in plants, and if it really crosses the limits, it can be very big threat to food security. So here, I'll briefly introduce like what are the different plant viral diseases and how are they classified, and all of the stuff. And I'll explain what are the different strategies for managing these viral diseases, and taking one or two case studies. So, if you look into the viral diseases of vegetable crops, tomato is the crop that has maximum number of viruses infecting it. Because of its succulent nature, it is highly vulnerable to viral diseases. Tomato is a vegetable crop which is under maximum cultivation, which is grown in almost 4.8 million hectares, and its estimated value of market is almost 40 billion US dollars as estimated in 2017, and there are 100 and it has maximum virus infecting it. There are at least, I think, 136 viruses infecting tomato, and there are around 49 viruses infecting pepper, that is capsicum, and there are 46 different viruses infecting melon, and there are 53 viruses infecting lettuce, and there are 54 viruses infecting potato. I'm sure every day you will have tomato or cucurbits or potato in your dish. This is all part of your food, daily food. And all these staple food crops are heavily infected by plant viral diseases. Even the brinjal or the eggplant is infected by 44 viruses. And cucumber, which is a major salad for us, is infected by 153 different viruses. So this is the intensity of damage that plant viruses can cause to crop plants. And uh, you can see the pictures here. This is tomato yellow leaf curl viral disease in tomato, and you can see this tomato pictures. I'm sure when you go to market to purchase tomato, you will see all these symptoms. This is because of tomato spotted wilt virus, a tospo virus, and the foliar symptoms are like what you see here. And this is bhendi. This is called as bendy yellow vein mosaic virus. Bendy is also called as okra, so it is okra yellow vein mosaic virus. And this is chili leaf curl virus, and this is zucchini yellow mosaic virus. So there are numerous viruses infecting vegetable crops, and These are some of the images where chili is affected by chili venal mottle virus, and this is cowpea affected by bean common mosaic virus, squash by zucchini yellow mosaic virus, pumpkin by the same virus, beans by bean yellow mosaic virus, and you can see the bendi infected by Gemini viruses, and almost every vegetable crop is affected by viral disease, and this is a field picture from Bangladesh where tomato is cultivated, and you can see the entire tomato field is devastated by a tospoviral disease in tomato called as peanut bud necrosis virus. So this is how the fruits look like. I'm sure you will never miss these symptoms when you buy some tomatoes. At least 1 or 2 tomatoes in a kg will have these kinds of symptoms. So you can see here the almost entire field is damaged. There is nothing left for the farmer for his bread and butter. So and recently there was a big viral outbreak in tomato farms in Maharashtra state. This overlapped with the corona pandemic, that is the first wave, and people started, there were rumors that it is corona, it may be coronavirus which is infecting tomato plants. That is the kind of fear that spread across the population in Maharashtra and neighboring states. And it was really not clear as to what is this viral disease. This had never happened before, and this suddenly started, and people literally stopped consuming tomatoes, thinking that they would get affected by coronavirus. That is the kind of fear that was instilled in the people of Maharashtra. So on collecting the samples and diagnosing, next generation sequencing was carried out, and it was found that there were at least 12 different plant viruses infecting tomato, but certainly it was not coronavirus that was infecting tomato. Plant viruses, they don't infect human beings, and human viruses, they are not transmitted to the plants. As of now, at least now, there is always a kingdom barrier. There are, and on diagnostics, it was really revealed that there are 12 viruses infecting this tomato, and that is how such a severe symptoms were produced. And these viruses were basically cucumber mosaic virus, chili venal mottle virus, groundnut bud necrosis virus, tomato leaf curl virus. So there were at least a dozen of viruses that were involved in spreading this disease, and that is the intensity of the damage that was there in the tomato farms of Maharashtra. And there was media reports that coronavirus has started infecting tomato. Thus the people were really scared to eat tomato in Maharashtra. Okay, that's all about vegetable crops. Here I am showing some of the images of viral diseases that are in roots and tuber crops. And this is tapioca, which is affected by cassava mosaic disease, and this is brown streak disease in the same crop. And this is potato virus Y, a potty virus affecting potato. And you can see sweet potato viruses are also prevalent in sweet potato, mostly in African countries. Okay. And these are some of the viral diseases in other plantation crops or fruit crops. Like this is cocoa sole and shoot virus. Cocoa, I'm sure, even if you may not know cocoa plant, but everybody eats chocolate. The chocolate is basically derived from cocoa. So and this is citrus orchard. You can see at least one of the plant totally damaged and dried up because of citrus tristeza virus. And this is banana streak virus in banana. This is banana bunchy top disease. The banana plant looks like a bunch of leaves. That's all. It is totally stunted and doesn't grow at all and doesn't produce any fruits. And this virus disease can spread to other plants through insect vectors. And this is papaya ring spot virus. I'm sure you see when you buy papaya in the market, you see these ring spots on the papaya. These will be there more or less or more. in different situation. So this is a global problem, papaya ring spot disease. And these are some of the viral disease in temperate fruit crops such as plum, apricot, peach, plum. You can see the different viral diseases in these temperate fruit crops, and even legume plants are affected by viral disease. This is groundnut rosette virus disease. You can see, on the side is the resistant variety that is resistant to groundnut rosette disease, but here at the center, this particular line is totally damaged by this rosette disease. And this is bean common mosaic virus, and this is bean yellow mosaic virus in the beans. This is bean golden mosaic virus because of the fluorescent yellow symptoms it gives. It's called as golden mosaic. It shines like gold. But all that looks gold is not really gold. This is a viral disease, and you see here mung bean yellow mosaic disease and soybean mosaic virus. So majority of the legumes like soybean, beans, groundnut, mung bean, green gram, black gram, they are all affected by severely by yellow mosaic disease. This is quite prevalent in many of the legume crops. And this is cotton leaf curl disease. This is mostly in northern India, not much in southern India, and the countries that are adjacent to North India. And this is sugarcane mosaic virus, tobacco mosaic virus. This is the first viral disease that was discovered, and that was purified. Otherwise, people were not aware of the virus. It was only because it passed through the bacterial filters, and that's why it's called as virus. Virus essentially means poison. So, and this is Cymbidium mosaic virus. In some of the ornamental plants, viral diseases are prevalent in ornamental flowering plants. You can see all these viral disease symptoms. And cereal crops, these monocots, they are also severely affected by viruses. Cereal viruses are not that much prevalent in our country, India, but they are quite damaging in United States of America and also several African countries. So this is wheat streak mosaic virus, barley yellow dwarf virus, maize dwarf mosaic virus, maize streak virus, rice stingray virus, which is common in Southeast Asia like Philippines, Vietnam, and other countries in that region. So all the viral diseases that I described about, if you put them together in a circle, they form something called as virosphere. This virosphere accommodates viruses that infect plants, human beings, animals, birds, everything have been brought together and put into this virosphere and classified taxonomically in a very systematic way. The basis of classification is based on what kind of species they infect, vertebrates or invertebrates, fungi, bacteria, plants or animals. And then based on their viral structure of the virus particles, and the kind of genome that they have, whether they have their genome is DNA or RNA. You might have heard, I'm sure you all are familiar with DNA. We know that DNA is the basically the molecule that is responsible for inheritance, that has the genetic information and all. But we might not have ever heard that RNA is also a genetic material that is inheritable, but this is quite common in viruses. In viral genome is represented by both DNA as well as RNA, and both DNA and RNA as genetic material, they are present in different shapes and forms. It may be single or in multiple forms. It could be single-stranded DNA or double-stranded DNA or circular DNA or linear DNA. And if it is RNA, it could be again single-stranded or double-stranded. And if it is single-stranded, it can be positive sense. Positive sense means it can directly without transcribing an mRNA, it can translate for a protein. And if it is negative sense, it is important that it transcribes an mRNA, and then mRNA eventually translates into a protein. So this is the difference between the negative sense and positive sense RNAs. So all these different forms of genomes or different forms of nucleic acids are found in all sorts of viruses that infect plants and animals and humans. So even in plants, you have viruses that may be having DNA genome or RNA genome or double-stranded or single-stranded. And this is in total the virus sphere. You can see the viruses infecting plants are distributed across this virus sphere. Here you have viruses, plant viruses with DNA as their genome, that is Gemini viruses and nanoviruses. Plant viruses with single-stranded RNA, which are in positive sense, like potiviruses. Single-stranded negative sense RNA viruses, such as they basically are in all called as tospoviruses or femoviruses. Then there are plant viruses which have double-stranded RNA, which are called as rhabdoviruses. These rhabdoviruses are similar to the rabies viruses that are transmitted by dog bites. So there are a lot of parallels between the viruses that infect plants, animals, and humans. However, it's important to note that these plant or animal viruses, they are not transmitted from one kingdom to another kingdom. Okay, I hope everybody is able to hear me. Is there clarity in my presentation?
Yes,
Organizers,
sir.
good, everything fine?
Yes, sir, everything is fine.
Okay, good. Because it should not so happen. I learned of instances wherein the speaker finished the presentation, but ultimately it was realized that the audience had not heard it. So I should not end up with such a situation.
We'll interrupt you whenever things happen.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, because at least in live, when you are physically present, you can see the audience faces. You can know whether they are understanding, not understanding, it is interesting to them or not. I don't see anybody here.
Yeah.
So it sometimes brings some sort of makes a person nervous to understand if it is clear to audience. So please interrupt me as and when there is something. Okay. I hope you can turn off your microphones. All right. See, conventionally, what generally farmers or majority of the farming community, what they do is they use conventional virus control methods such as quarantine. Quarantine is very important. Probably people were not aware of the word quarantine before, but after this COVID pandemic, the word quarantine has become so popular. Even a farmer in a village, an illiterate person also knows what quarantine is. They expect people going from metros into villages, they ask them to quarantine for 2 weeks time so that they remain non-transmittive to other people. So quarantine is something very important when we import plant material, seed material from overseas or other places. It is very important to carry out seed certification or plant certification, and phytosanitation is something very important. And changing cropping practices. For example, this time the papaya plantation was severely affected by papaya viral disease. Next time it would not be a good idea to take up papaya again, because the source of virus is still present in the field. So it would be a good idea to switch on to another crop, say monocots or some vegetable crops. So we have to carry out this crop rotation practices so that we don't propagate viral diseases. And breeding for host plant resistance is something which is very important. This is what is being done in most of the research institutes dealing with agricultural research, be it agriculture universities or Indian Council of Agriculture Research, and even private companies. And chemical control of viral insect vectors. Many of the viral diseases are transmitted by insect vectors. Corona is not transmitted by insect vectors, but there are many viral diseases like dengue virus, chikungunya that are transmitted by mosquitoes. So similarly, plant viruses are transmitted by several different insect vectors such as whitefly, jacid, thrips, aphids. So there are different insect vectors that transmit different viral disease. So it is very important to control these viral insect vectors by applying the suitable pesticides or insecticides. And in some of the citrus orchards, something called as mild strain protection is being carried out. This is something similar to vaccination that we are taking up now. a mild strain of the virus is vaccinated on the plants to give protection to the plants from subsequent infection by severe strains of viruses. The similar kind of thing we do here. Right now we are many of you might be or in future might get vaccinated by the vaccine against coronavirus. So these are different conventional strategies that are used. This is a breeding program. The slide movement is a bit difficult. Okay, the previous one, yeah, this is a tomato breeding field in Guatemala, that's in South America, where you can see, these are all tomato plants that are susceptible to viral disease. This is a resistant line. These are all resistant lines. So by crossing, resistant varieties with cultivated popular varieties of tomato, the resistant source of resistance is introgressed through a couple of crossings, and you get plants resistant to viral disease. And this is a program for breeding golden yellow mosaic virus resistant beans in Colombia. You can see, these are the resistant varieties. This is a resistant variety against bean yellow mosaic disease. This is a susceptible one. You can see the symptoms here, but absolutely there are no symptoms here in this SMR 72 variety. So this is a breeding program in soybean against yellow mosaic. You can see this particular line which is severely affected by yellow mosaic disease, whereas the other one is lush green, totally free from any yellow mosaic. So these are all the products of breeding. This is a special case. A person, retired faculty from Mysore University, has started his own NGO kind of thing called as Technical Green Life Science Technology. He's based in Mysore, and he has come up with a cocktail of solution, which can, when it's sprayed on papaya, the papaya ring spot disease is minimized, or it does not come at all. And but yeah, we are not sure about the composition of this solution. I will not elaborate much on this. So this is a cross protection strategy that was first developed in Israel, in citrus, or Turkey and Israel in Middle East, in citrus farms. You can see this this cross protected plant is not affected by Tristeza virus, but the plant that is not vaccinated or not cross protected is severely affected by Tristeza virus, and it is completely stunted. All right, that's all about conventional strategies. But now, today's topic is on transgenic strategies or biotechnological interventions for control of viral disease. So there are several different methodologies that can be employed. One can overexpress coat protein, that is called as coat protein mediated protection, or different viral genes are overexpressed in plants, and that gives resistance to virus. So this is something similar, like we are using. Now different companies have come up with different products of vaccines. Some of them are derived from protein based, some of them are mRNA based technologies like Moderna in US, or there are different strategies. Similarly, for control of plant viral diseases, different plant genes can be overexpressed, viral genes can be overexpressed in plants to get virus resistance. And gene silencing is something very important, which is also called as RNA interference. It comes in different forms. There are something called as double-stranded RNA, short hairpin RNA, artificial microRNAs, microRNA induced gene silencing through tRNA, that is trans-activated siRNAs. These are all different gene silencing strategies that are being used for virus control, and these are all derived from viral sources, so they are called as pathogen-derived virus resistance. But there are non-viral sources also that can be employed for transgenic virus resistance. For example, R genes. R stands for resistant genes. Some of the varieties that are resistant to viral diseases, you isolate that particular gene and engineer other plants using that R gene and make it resistant to corresponding viruses. So there are genome editing technologies such as zinc finger technologies, TALENs, CRISPR-Cas, Antiviral antibodies are also used. Ribosomal inactivating proteins are used for viral resistance. There are protease inhibitors such as lectins, which prevent translation of plant viral proteins, and thus virus does not proliferate. It stops there only and doesn't spread to the plant. So there are systemic acquired resistance based on, it's mostly based on hormonal, that is salicylic acid based resistance. So these are different biotechnological interventions that can be employed to accomplish virus resistance. So to start with coat protein mediated resistance, this was first discovered way back in 1986 by Dr. Roger Beachy. He was based in Washington University in St. Louis. So he first employed this resistance against tobacco mosaic virus. So what he did was he took the coat protein, isolated the coat protein gene of tobacco mosaic virus. As I said, tobacco mosaic virus is the virus that was discovered for the first time in the world. This is the first virus to be discovered and characterized in 18th century. And so tobacco plants were made transgenic by overexpressing the tobacco mosaic virus coat protein. And when the coat protein was overexpressed, those plants were totally immune to infection by tobacco mosaic virus. You can see these plants, these are transgenic, that are resistant to tobacco mosaic virus, don't show any symptoms even after infecting them with TMV, whereas the non-transgenic plants, these three plants, are severely affected by tobacco mosaic virus. You can see the chlorosis on the leaves. There is absolutely no chlorophyll and the plants look yellow and pale, and these are all affected by tobacco mosaic virus. So tobacco mosaic virus is not transmitted by insect. It can be transmitted by sap inoculation. You just take some leaf sap and rub it on the healthy leaves. It can be easily transmitted to the new plants. So that, and it's a highly severe and contagious virus. Now we are hearing of, like coronavirus South African strain or Nigerian strain or UK strain that are more transmissive than the previous strains of coronavirus that was present in India, and can be transmitted in a very short time or transmitted in a very short interaction than that was before. So the mechanism or the basis of the resistance is not completely understood. There are different hypotheses. Like when there is overexpression of the coat protein of the virus, this viral coat protein, immediately encapsulates the viral nucleic acid that gets into the plant cell and doesn't let it to transcribe or translate. And that is how, the virus replication is arrested. Virus doesn't proliferate at all, and the plant remain free from viral symptoms and viral infection. So this is the basis, but there are it is not completely proved. There are certain loopholes on this in this hypothesis. But whatever may be the case, this technology has been successfully employed in controlling several viral diseases. This is not effective against viruses that have DNA as their genome, such as Gemini viruses. However, this has been effective against only RNA viruses such as cucumber mosaic virus, zucchini yellow mosaic virus, watermelon mosaic virus, or papaya ring spot virus, which all have the genome as RNA. Okay, this is not effective against DNA viruses. So not all the technologies work. They are not universal. They don't work against all the viruses. Every technology has limitations. So its use is sometimes very narrow and focused. You cannot universalize any technology. So one has to carefully choose or understand the target virus and choose the technology that one thinks is more effective in controlling the target virus. So this is first commercial virus resistant transgenic squash that was released in the United States, and it was developed by a private company. This squash was resistant against 3 different viruses infecting squash, that is cucumber mosaic virus, zucchini yellow mosaic virus, and watermelon mosaic virus. And it was being successfully cultivated by the farmers, but later on, some of the NGOs started objecting this, and there were some issues. Although the plant performed very well in the field, but it had to be withdrawn from the market because of certain objections. So you can see here, this is a healthy transgenic, and Beside it are the non-transgenics that are affected by the virus. And this is the field trial where in the middle you have transgenics totally free from viral disease. At the periphery, you have non-transgenics. And this is one of the most famous example, not only for virus resistant, but for successful implementation of transgenic technology across the globe. This example is from Hawaii Islands, that is part of United States, that is in the Pacific Ocean. And you can see the transgenic virus resistant papaya developed using coat protein mediated technology. And this transgenic was, when it was planted in the field, you can see in the middle lush green papaya plants surrounded by non-transgenics that are, that are succumbed to viral infection. And there is barely any green foliage here. This is an aerial picture. So I'm sure you can appreciate the success of transgenic technology. And these are all the close-up of the same field. You can see the non-transgenic here totally stunted, whereas the transgenics have lush green leaf. They have grown up tall, and they are totally free from viral incidents and have good bearing of papaya fruits. So this has been now almost 12-13 years since it is being cultivated in Hawaii Islands, and it still stands resistant to virus, and the resistance has not broken even now. So such resistant technologies have been used successfully in China and some of the Southeast Asian countries. In India, we are yet to come up with a transgenic papaya. We cannot buy these papaya plants and start growing here because the virus that are affecting papaya in India are entirely different, and this technology or this particular transgene will not be effective against viruses that are present in India. That's why we are not able to do that. We have to develop our own transgenic varieties, and it's going to take time. And you can see here at the time of harvest, the non-transgenics are totally infected and have fallen down. And all right, in nature, every individual after infection by viral disease has its own potential to recover from viral infection. Even we as human beings, many of us, when we are affected by viral diseases, we recover even without taking any medication. So the plants also have that similar power of recovering from virus infection. This is a picture of tobacco plant that is affected by tobacco ring spot virus initially, and eventually it has recovered from viral infection. You can see the healthy leaves. This was published way back in 1928, almost 90 to 100 years from now. And however, the molecular basis of this recovery was not known. It was only later in 1998 that Sir David Balcomb's discoveries revealed that this kind of recovery is because of gene silencing or RNA silencing. So this RNA silencing mechanism is an innate immune mechanism system of plants. Like we have our immune system, plants have a different kind of immune system. So one of the major immune system is because of RNA silencing. So, when viruses infect plants, they go through a phase of multiplication. This is a Gemini virus, that's a DNA virus that is replicating in a plant cell. And during the course of replication and transcription and translation, during transcription, virus promoters are very strong. They transcribe very efficiently at very high rate. So during that transcription process, lot of aberrant RNAs are produced that are structurally defective. They may not have poly A tails, or they are partial in nature. Such defective or aberrant transcripts, they invite RNA dependent RNA polymerase, and they form double-stranded RNA. And when there is formation of double-stranded RNA, that is the key molecule that triggers gene silencing. So this double-stranded RNA triggers gene silencing and eventually results in production of small RNA by action by different dicer like proteins or different RNA dependent RNA polymerases or RISC complexes. So this cycle continues, and small RNAs are produced against viruses, and eventually because of these small RNAs, and a plant that is initially infected by viral disease, it recovers from viral infection. So this is a picture from our own lab. You can see this is a relative of tobacco called Nicotiana benthamiana, that is affected by a Gemini virus, and eventually it has recovered and the plant later on looks healthy. So using this RNA interference technology, people have developed transgenic beans in Brazil, and now in Brazil it is about to be cultivated. It has gone through the regulatory process and approved by Brazilian government for farmers cultivation, and you can see here the transgenic beans is totally resistant to bean golden mosaic virus, whereas the non-transgenic, you can see it has succumbed to virus infection. So beans is a staple food for Brazilians or many of the South Americans like us. Tur dal or arar dal is a staple food for them. Every bread delicacy they have, it always comes up with beans as a filling. So here in India, in collaboration, our lab in collaboration with IIT Guwahati, we developed RNAi based cowpea that was resistant to mung bean yellow mosaic virus, again a Gemini virus, using RNAi strategy. You can see the transgenic plant leaves are free from viral symptoms, whereas the non-transgenic controls, they are having viral symptoms. So this is all derived from RNA interference technology by targeting important genes of the virus, such as the replicase genes that are involved in viral replication. That's all about pathogen derived resistance. Now we have host resistance, that is resistance derived from host plants. There are certain varieties or wild relatives of plant species that have R genes or resistant genes, and these R genes, they respond to attack by a virus through R and AVR interaction. Based on nature of interaction, the phenotype can be resistance or it can be susceptibility. So these R genes are basically NBS LLR proteins. NB stands for nucleotide binding, leucine rich repeat proteins. Here is the structure of these viral proteins. These are basically the key resistant molecules against any viral infection that is derived from the host plants itself. So these are the people who have done a lot of work in R genes. All right, the molecular basis of R gene is entirely different from RNAi. It basically triggers several, activates several hormones like jasmonic acid or nitric oxide or salicylic acid, and eventually results in reactive oxygen species. And there is hypersensitive reaction, and there is necrosis in the place where virus infects, and because of the necrosis, the virus replication is arrested there. You all know that virus is an obligate parasite. It cannot live in a non-living source. It needs a living source to multiply and to be active. So if the cell death is there and the cell replication has stopped, viral replication will also stop, and the virus proliferation or replication is completely arrested when there is hypersensitive reaction and necrosis of the leaf tissue. So this is one of the resistance mechanism that many of the wild relatives, resistant varieties of plant viruses, exhibit this kind of phenomenon. So the genes that are involved in resistance are identified by molecular markers. Some of the genes are identified in tomato that shows resistant to tospovirus, and they are essentially NBS LLR proteins. So you can see how the genes are mapped on chromosome 9 here in the tomato genome, and there are different loci like SW5 and 5A, and a variety of them in different varieties, and these may be responsible for tospovirus resistance. All right, how much time I have? Organizers, may I please know how much time I am left with? Can I speak up to 10:30? Another half an hour?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If I'm not wrong, I was allotted time up to 10:30. Can I speak for another half an hour?
Yes, sir, sure.
Okay. So now, that's all what was done in different labs or across the globe, the history of plant viruses, virus resistance. Now I'll describe, the project in which I worked, and I had put in my heart and soul to get excellent results. So I'll describe about this study, which was done during my postdoctoral studies of 5 years in a center called as Donald Danforth Plant Center, based in St. Louis in United States. So This is one of the world-class plant science research institute. It comes in top 5 in the globe with respect to the plant science research. So I worked in a project called as virus-resistant cassava for Africa. So this was a multi-institutional project in collaboration with several African countries for development of virus-resistant cassava. This is the cassava root that is eaten by people. And if you want to know the plants, this is the cassava plant. No, it looks like a weed. It's a wild species. Many people may not believe that it can be eaten up, but this is a staple food that's grown in several African countries. This is like wheat or rice for us. For them, this is tapioca or cassava, Manioc esculentus. That's a staple food for African countries. And it's also being cultivated in Kerala and now in different parts of India, mostly for industrial purpose. But in Africa, they grow it for their first-hand consumption as a staple food, and there are a lot of delicacies that can be produced from this crop. There are cookies produced, a lot of different dishes developed. Even sabudana sago. Just few days back, there was Shivaratri. People, when they are on fasting, they consume sabudana, which is starch, a resistant starch, which helps in release of starch, which is the source of energy for us. So, and there are a lot of industrial applications like some of the medicines that we consume, white tablets, previously that we used to have, that all mostly has cassava starch, the gum produced starch, or some of the politicians, they wear very highly pressed clothes. So that's all from starched by the cassava starch. So a lot of applications, and it's called as a plant of future because it's highly resistant to drought, and it's not it can grow in severe moisture deficient scenarios, and it's a very promising crop for the current climate change scenario. So it's now very important that we encourage research in this particular crop. However, since this crop is vegetatively propagated, it's severely affected by several different viruses. There are at least 20 different viruses which affect this crop. This is a field picture. You can see how the cassava roots, tuberous roots, are harvested, and how the starch is produced from these cassava tuberous roots. Here in India, it is done on an industrial scale for production of sabudana. There are many sabudana plants based in Salem and other parts of Tamil Nadu. So, but locally in Africa, you can see how they are taking out starch and making different dishes. So this cassava is native to South America. It was not actually present in Africa or other parts of the world. It was only present in South America. But as usual, the Portuguese sailors, they moved to South America for exploratory work, and they took this tapioca introduced in Africa and India and other Southeast Asian countries. And they did not introduce the viruses. What they introduced was only the plant. But however, the local viruses that infected different vegetable crops such as tomato or other crops, they eventually evolved and started infecting tapioca. We hear about virus evolution. We have heard about that. The viruses infecting pangolin have evolved and started infecting human beings. So viruses infecting bats, using pangolin as a mediator host, they evolved to infect human beings. So similar kind of evolution in plant viruses, it happens. And such local viruses, they evolved and mutated through different recombinations, and eventually they started infecting this cassava crop. And since this plant is vegetatively propagated, so many of the viruses are not seed transmitted, but some of the plants that are vegetatively propagated, like tapioca or potato or sugarcane, in such cases, virus transmission is very fast. So this tapioca is severely affected by viral disease. And you can see here the cassava field in Africa, which is severely affected by cassava mosaic virus, whereas that in China, it remains totally healthy, free from viral infection. This is close-up of cassava mosaic disease. This is the leaf. showing severe mosaic symptoms. When you look into microscope, you can see these virus particles. These are Gemini twinned particles, hence called as Gemini. And hence Gemini viruses. So these are geminate virus particles that one can see in electron microscope, and each virus particle is of the size of around 10 to 20 nanometers, and these viruses are transmitted by insect vectors called as white flies. These are all very small insect vectors, and they can easily transmit Gemini viruses. So this virus is not just one viral species, but there are several different viral species and viral strains and isolates that are present in this class of Cassava infecting Gemini viruses, and they are widely distributed in African and Indian subcontinent. And now recently there are reports of this virus arising in Southeast Asian countries. So this is structure of a Gemini virus genome. This is a circular plant viral genome that is just 2,700 nucleotide in size, or 2.7 kb. There are basically two components. One is called as A and another one is called as B. A encodes for code protein and other replication associated proteins, and B encodes for movement proteins. So all that is green here, this is where tapioca is cultivated, but only in Africa and Indian subcontinent there is prevalence of these Gemini viruses infecting tapioca. And as I said, there are several different species, different strains, and that is what we hear about coronaviruses now. So, we try to employ RNA interference technology. What basically we do in RNA interference is we make a hairpin loop. We put the sense strand of the viral gene, and then we make it, put it in a reverse way, making it antisense, so that when the transcript is produced, sense and antisense can fold back and make a double-stranded RNA. And the formation of double-stranded RNA is very key for, very important for triggering gene silencing or RNA interference. So whenever there is double-stranded RNA, the gene silencing is triggered, and there are several proteins involved in gene silencing, such as dicer-like molecules, proteins. They are activated, and they convert this double-stranded RNA into small interfering RNAs. So these small interfering RNAs, they bind to the viral transcript, and this goes as a circle. This is a circular pathway wherein small RNAs are produced and they bind to mRNA, and double-stranded RNA is produced, again small RNA, and again that is how the viral genome proliferation is completely controlled. Whatever transcript is produced, it is immediately degraded, and there is no scope for production of viral proteins, and there is no viral symptom produced, and the viral infection is arrested. So we developed an agroinfiltration strategy to screen RNAi construct in a very short span of time to know whether they are capable of producing the small RNAs. So many a times knowing the best target gene is very important. That is what now these vaccination programs are. Some of them are targeting replicase, some of them are targeting the code protein. So we wanted to know what is the best target DNA sequence. So we developed more than 2 dozens of RNAi constructs, and using this transient strategy, we screened and identified the best construct, because making transgenic is a very lengthy process, will take several years, and at the end of production of transgenic, we don't want to hear that the construct is not working fine. So before we get on to transgenic production, we want to know through a very precise protocol, brief protocol, whether the RNAi constructs are functional or not. So you can see the small RNAs that are detected by northern hybridization, and we identified only those constructs that produced good amount of small RNA. Some of them, they have not produced the good amount of small RNA. So we picked up those constructs, and then they were transformed in cassava to make transgenic cassava by through tissue culture and transformation methods. And finally, it was taken to the greenhouse and screened for virus resistance, and only those that were resistant in the greenhouse were subjected to field trials in Africa. There were basically two phases of trials. Initially, we carried out transgenic production only in one variety that was amenable for tissue culture and transformation, and phase 1 trial was carried out. And then on successful execution in the field, the same constructs were mobilized into cultivars that are cultivated by, or varieties that are grown by farmers, local farmers in African countries, and transgenics were made in those local varieties, and field trials were subjected. This is picture of field trial. You can see the non-transgenic cassava that is having viral symptoms. Transgenic is free from viral symptoms. Okay, by the time we solved the problem of Gemini virus infection, another new virus called as cassava brown streak virus emerged in African continent. And this viral disease was much more devastating than the previous virus. It totally caused necrosis in the edible portion of the cassava plant, and it made the the edible portion completely unfit for consumption. Even it was not possible to feed the animals with this economic part of cassava. This is called as brown streak because it causes brown streak symptoms, and in the foliage you see a lot of chlorosis, feathery chlorosis on the leaf portion. So this virus, although it was discovered way back in 1935, but it was not present in large scale, so it was ignored and neglected. However, in 2000s, it started spreading from Kenya to Malawi, from Mozambique to Burundi, Congo, and Angola, and it came up in severe forms, pandemic forms. Now it has become almost a pandemic, and the lab in US, we developed the first virus-resistant cassava brown streak resistant tapioca, and this particular disease is considered one of the most dangerous disease in the 10 plant diseases that were listed in the journal Science way back in 2010, and it was highlighted several times in New York Times for the amount of damage it causes and the extent of threat it has on food security of people in Africa. So the genome of this viral is similar to potyviruses. This is the genome structure, which is similar to several other viruses infecting vegetable crops. It's transmitted by whitefly, the same insect that transmits Gemini virus. So it's a very good opportunity for whitefly to transmit two different viral diseases in tapioca, making the scenario much more complicated and very difficult to solve because it's single vector transmitting two diseases. So you can see the extent of damage caused by this disease in different parts of Africa, in Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda. Some of the strains are highly damaging, and you can see it is completely rotten. My slides are not moving easily. Oh yeah. So before you start, planning for developing a resistance strategy, it is very important to know about viral population. You just cannot develop a resistance strategy just based on one viral sequence. If you develop a vaccine just based on one viral sequence, your vaccine might not work on other different strains and isolates of the virus. So it is very important to know about the viral diversity. So we collected samples from several different parts of East African countries where this viral disease was prevalent, and we sequenced them and try to understand the viral disease or the population of viruses. And eventually we learned that there are two different species of viruses that are represented in blue color and in pink color, pink circles. So these two were prevalent in two different parts of Eastern Africa. However, because of exchange of planting material, there was a lot of mixed infection, and there was movement of both the viruses in all different regions, and this eventually led to mixed infection, making the scenario much more complicated. So, there are a lot of parallels between how these viral pandemics occur in African countries and the viral pandemics that what we are seeing now because of coronavirus. There are a lot of different strains, mixed infection, development of vaccines, which works against African strain or Nigerian strain or UK strain. So we all read about this in newspapers, hear about that in media, different media sources. So similar is the situation in plants, but since when plants are affected, we are not affected. That's why probably we are thick-skinned towards plant viral diseases. But when it comes to human viruses, we are very sensitive about that. And nothing wrong in that, but it's important to see that plants are also equally well protected because they are a source of food for us, and it's very important for food security of the future generation, especially in the climate change, changing climate scenario. So, we developed RNA constructs for the viral genome, and we first screened them in a model host plant for resistance, and because it is very important to know if the viral constructs are working fine in the model host, using a model host, because when we develop transgenics, and before we develop transgenic, it's very important to carry out all this basic research, so that whatever strategy ultimately we come up with is really durable and stable. So first we did all the experiments in tobacco plants, and we confirmed that this technology works well against this virus, and we found that some of the sequences could give cross protection to different species or strains or isolates of viruses involved in Cassava brown streak disease. And you can see here, this is the level of resistance that is graphically represented by different transgenic lines. Especially this particular plant line, which is producing a lot of small RNA, high level of small RNA, is resistant to several different strains. You can see this is also resistant here to other viral species involved in brown streak virus. So the gene expression of the gene, the transgene in the plant, is very important to have good resistance. So this is very key to identify the transgenic line that's a good expressor, to see that it really performs well in the field. So then transgenic tapioca were made and field trials were done. Initially, in the greenhouse, we did grafting experiments to transmit the virus to know if there is source resistance available. And once the transgenic resistance was confirmed in the greenhouse, then we took them to African farms. I have a problem in moving the slides. My slides are not. So, what is important is capacity building. You just cannot take a transgenic plant to African countries or remote areas and tell the farmers that this is transgenic, and you may end up with a very bad experience. So it is very important to create a scenario that is very friendly, and you educate the people that transgenic technology is really good. You get the people from those target regions, train them in your lab, make them involved in development of transgenic technology, so that they themselves are sure that we are not using any bad thing in development of transgenics. Whatever procedures or protocols we follow in development of transgenics are really safe, and they are friendly, and much more friendly than using these pesticides and insecticides that are the key reasons for development of so many cancer cases across the globe, especially in the places where there is intensive agriculture and wherein the pesticide use is rampant. So we got people from Africa, we trained them and went to Africa, developed the facilities for carrying out these field trials, gained the confidence of the people, and then successful field trials were conducted in Africa. And you can see the picture of one such field trial wherein the transgenic plants are completely free from necrosis, whereas the non-transgenic control is severely affected by necrosis, and there was a lot of rotting of the tuberous pith of the tuberous root, and that makes it completely unfit for consumption by not only human beings, by even animals also. So we collected leaf samples to know if all these plants are producing small RNA. We got them to the lab, checked them for small RNA production. We were very happy to know that all the transgenic plants that showed resistance had produced good amount of small RNA. So the proof of concept is very clear, and it's very clear that RNA interference technology does work in the open field conditions and gives good amount of stable virus resistance, not only in one generation but across different generations. We carried out these experiments across different generations by stem cuttings, and we found that these lines were really stable with reference to their trait for virus resistance. Sometimes there can be mixed infection. You can see here a Gemini virus as well as this RNA virus. They are mixed infecting the tapioca plant. How severe the disease symptoms are. We can replicate this in model host plants like Nicotiana benthamina, which is close relative of tobacco. You can see the severity of the symptoms. So now it is not important to develop just resistance against one target virus, but it's important to know the entire population of viruses or the entire large number of species of viruses that are involved in one particular species and develop a multi-pronged strategy for resistance to multiple viruses. So we made constructs that had sequences from different viruses. We put them together and made a hairpin construct so that we come up with a a transgenic plant line that is resistant to not just one virus but couple of viruses that are a serious problem in one particular plant in a region. So genome editing is a technology which has shown a lot of promise, and many people are harping on this to employ this technology in getting remedies for several problems in agriculture, not only agriculture, even medicine. So there are different tools and techniques in genome editing that are being successfully used for control of plant viruses also, starting with zinc finger technology and CRISPR-Cas, the different versions of Cas proteins. Some of them they can target the viral DNA, some of them can target the viral RNA, or with these CRISPR-Cas proteins you can modify even the host genes, make them from susceptible to resistant plants. So this has already been done for brown stick virus. I'll not really elaborate much on this. You can see these transgenic plants, how healthy they are. The roots, tuberous roots look like Rambo's muscles, and they are very healthy. And this is an image that came in leading African newspaper. This picture is from Kenya, where disease resistant and nutritionally enhanced cassava is developed for Africa. And now the government is trying to push it for farmers cultivation, for seeking approval through a lot of lengthy regulatory procedure, which is very complicated particularly for the transgenic plants than the plants that are developed by breeding. So all this work could not have been done without the funding from several funding agencies like Monsanto, USAID, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Buffett Foundation, and there was a large team involved in this. The team leader was Dr. Claude Fauquet, and there are several other tissue culture experts and highly skilled technicians, people invited from Africa to work in this project. So yeah, that's all about this. And in addition to this, after returning back to India, I started emphasizing on double-stranded RNA technology, because in India, the scenario is very difficult to develop transgenics because the ground is not really fertile for cultivation of transgenics. So we have to develop a technology, biotechnological intervention that is different from transgenic, but can give a solution to plant viral disease. So here you express double-stranded RNA in bacterial cell, you isolate them and develop a formulation that can be efficient against a certain class of viruses. And using double-stranded spray, like the way you do foliar spray using pesticides or fungicides, the same way you can come up with a formulation that can give protection against subsequent infection by viruses. So we have done this against papaya ring spot virus, a major problem for papaya cultivation in India. You can see by giving double-stranded RNA sprays, the plant was free from symptoms, whereas those plants which were not sprayed by double-stranded RNA all showed symptoms because of viral infection. So similar strategy we used for a virus that is prevalent in pigeon pea. This was done in collaboration with US Bangalore. We developed a double-stranded RNA based strategy using, that was against pigeon pea stolidity mosaic emara virus. So this is one of the field trial in a very small scale. We executed in the farms of US Bangalore, and you can see using double stranded RNA sprays, the plants remain free from viral infection, whereas the control plants are showing Amara virus infection and the mosaic symptoms. So this still needs a lot of refinement, because considering the economics of production of double stranded RNA, to make it popular or to take it at a commercial level, we have to reduce the cost of production of double stranded RNA and use other additives and other formulations, such as we need people from nanotechnology, which can be good carriers for double stranded RNA and make it more amenable for spraying on the plants, and to make it more durable and stable in the open environmental conditions, so that the efficiency or effectiveness of spray remains for a longer duration. So there are a lot of scope for research opportunities. I'm sure, since this training program is for technology development, people can come up and collaborate with people like me and come up with formulations based on nanotechnologies or using different nanoparticles that can be good carriers for such double-stranded RNA molecules. And without having to generate transgenic plants, we can come up with remedies against plant viral diseases. So thank you one and all. Just I'm highlighting a book that was recently edited and published last year by me. Thanks everyone for this opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Manjunath and Dr. Salma, for this opportunity. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them up.
Dear participants, if you have any questions, please unmute yourself and ask, or you can pose the question yourself.
I hope I was clear. I know I was a bit fast considering the time constraint, but by and large, I'm sure I have given the message that was to be given with reference to this training program.
Sir, we have a question. There is Dr. Balasubramanian who asks, sir, good information.
Can you please be, I'm not able to, it is not very much audible what you are saying. Can you please be a little bit more louder?
Now, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. Maybe I'll put on the microphone, the headphones, so that probably I can hear. Yeah, please.
There is Dr. Balasubramanian who asks, sir, good information. And my doubt is that in tomato plants is virus problem more in summer or winter? That is viral replication seasonal or not?
Okay, so there are some studies to see the effect of virus, the effect of environmental conditions on virus. What the effect temperature has, what is the effect of light intensity or humidity that might have in virus population. But all the studies have not really come up with any foolproof. There is, but what the viral incidence, since many of the viruses are transmitted by insect vectors, the population or the mating or the breeding of insect vectors is very much dependent on the environmental conditions. Like we have severe mosquito problem in rainy seasons. That's when a lot of dengue and chikungunya cases come up. Similarly, in plants, in summer, the insect vector population is quite high. For example, the whitefly population is quite high during summer, and that's when the viral incidence is also high in summer. It may not be directly correlated with the correlation between virus and the temperature, prevailing temperature, but it may be because of the insect vector breeding takes place quite fast during certain seasons, and breeding activities is less in certain seasons.
So we have another question. Mr. Pavan asks, what hinders implementation of GM crops in India?
What hinders implementation of GM crops in India? We human beings are hindering the implementation of GM crops in India. It's the policies and the policy makers that are not favorable for release of GM crops. That is what is hindering. When it comes to vaccination, there also vaccines are developed through several biotechnological advancements. But the same biotechnological advancements, when they are being used for development of GM crops, we are resistant to accept those GM crops. It's somehow I feel it's I mean, one has to carefully deal with this, but we should not be completely resistant to acceptance of transgenic crops. But the future is for transgenic crops, of course. Still there are a lot of improvements that, it's the policies basically. Although the only transgenic crop that is grown in India is BT cotton. For cultivation, for taking up large scale cultivation of BT cotton, how many strikes or how many NGO activities were against it. It was not easy to for promoting BT cotton cultivation in India. But now 90% of cotton in India is transgenic cotton, BT cotton. People have accepted because we don't eat cotton. It's mostly for fabrics. So that is why probably. But for edible crops, we have a lot of resistance. For example, BT brinjal was developed in India, but we did not accept it. However, our neighboring country, Bangladesh, they have taken BT brinjal from India and they are growing it on wide. They are now cultivating it and people are growing BT brinjal. There are stories, that BT brinjal is being smuggled into adjacent parts of Bangladesh in India, especially Northeast India, and people there are growing BT brinjal, though not legally. So although transgenic crops offer a lot of promises, but one has to take this up very carefully to see that they are really safe. But we should not be completely resistant to accept them. Considering current climate change scenario and the kinds of viral disease outbreaks that we are going through, without accepting transgenic crops, I doubt if we can solve the farmers' problem completely. These are all policy decisions. I can't say much on this.
Probably it is a lack of awareness about.
Yeah, one is extension activity. We need to have very good extension programs and convince the farmers of the real advantage of these transgenic plants. That is where probably we have failed. I think you had a talk from. Yeah, we should open up.
We should share the data, whatever we have collected in the field. We should share the data to convince the farmers and other NGO organizations that it is not going to harm any thing to the environment. It is not going to cause any harm to the environment.
Yeah.
Probably by doing that, the faculty members and the participants who are attending it, by propagating this information to the NGOs and other common public, probably we can expect the GM crops in the forthcoming days.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we have to do a systematic extension approach to commercialize these GM crops, and there is a lot of lobby from pesticide companies also, which these are funding some of the NGOs which are against the GM technology. So there is a lot of politics behind this.
Yes.
So it
so
really
when it comes to controlling the virus, when it comes to controlling the virus, are you working with any herbal extract to control the virus also?
No, I am particularly not working on that, but there are people working on it. I think I showed you one particular slide wherein one person from Mysore, he has come up with this, Dr. Vasant Kumar, he has come up with a solution called as Power Plus. So it probably has shown good results, but I have not seen this trial in person. If you are interested, you can contact this person, and since it's an entrepreneurship program, you people can come up with certain and collaborate with virologists during our horticulture mela, I have seen some of the stalls wherein they had exhibited some of the formulations, derived plant extracts. They claim it to be antiviral, and by spraying on the plants, they say that it's not very clear if this antiviral nature is really against the virus or it is against the insect vectors that transmit the virus. You know, these probably repel the insect vectors and thus avoid the transmission of virus, but they really may not act on the virus directly. It is an indirect way of control of viral diseases by inhibiting the proliferation of, or by repelling the insect vectors.
But in case if our students want to do internship in your institute under your guidance, is there any provision for that?
Yeah, there is a provision, but there is also a protocol. Probably
Yes.
this has to come through proper channel. You have to write to our director, communicate to our director about this. There are a lot of people who come for internship programs, but if you want to do it for the entire batch of students, then it has to be done very systematically, because we get students from agricultural universities as interns in our labs. But exceptionally, we get from private colleges through case by case, through proper channel and by approval by by the director or some of the committees of our institute. So if there are one or two people who want to come, case by case, approval can be taken for them and they can be allowed to work in the lab. But there are certain fee structures also. So probably one has to pay certain fees to do the internship, but I think it's quite reasonable. It's not really expensive. It's something
Few
like,
of our students are doing in your institute, and a few of them now they are interested to work under you. So
certainly,
yesterday
yeah, certainly you are. I can accommodate one or two students, not an issue. Yeah, we can discuss on that.
Sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming over and delivering in very informative talk. And we'll be look forward for your cooperation and collaboration in the forthcoming days.
Yeah, sure, a pleasure. Thanks for
Yes, sir.
having me on your list. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So thank you for that informative talk, sir.
Yeah,
On
thank you.
behalf of the student staff and the management of the Oxford College of Engineering, I extend my heartfelt gratitude for you to have accepted this invite and have delivered a wonderful talk on the topic, which benefits both the student as well as the faculty community. So thank you, sir. Looking for further interactions with you in future. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Can I close now?
Yes, sir. You may kindly log on.